I think that's great.
We're here, and today we're going to talk about trees, which is Lynn always had this revelation about trees this past week.
Yeah. I actually started a few weeks ago. The universe has kind of been asking me to talk about trees and Judaism, and I thought, okay, let's have this conversation. It started about right around January 1st. We have this really cool Jewish calendar. I think we got it at Price Chopper.
It's possible.
And it has all these celebrations, these holidays, special days throughout the year, and it's kind of become a thing in our house where like it's hanging right in the kitchen. So when we're cooking, we look through it and converse and talk about that. And my husband found one a couple weeks ago that was listed as the New Year of the Trees.
Yep.
We are Arbor Day members in my house. We're big tree people, so he had never heard that phrase before. So we kind of wanted to start there and see if we could get a little explanation, background about the New Year of the trees.
Okay. Well, the trees are a big deal in Judaism, but it goes farther back than just the New Year for trees, because the New Year for trees came up around the Mishnah. In it's actually the Mishnah of Rosh Hashanah that
Okay.
talks about the New Year. So that really came about somewhere between 200 BCE and 200 CE. And then there's a whole Gemara after that. But before that, in the terms of the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to turn to the book of Psalms, which is what I happen to have in front of me. And it's also in the prayer book, which is interesting. Um, so one mention of trees is one that people are familiar with in the liturgy. It is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Also, Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomchem me'ushar, which is the song when you put the Torah away either as the ark is closing or as people sing it afterwards the ark
Mm-hmm.
closes, and then usually the rabbi gives a sermon. It's usually done on a Saturday morning. Some Reform congregations do it on a Friday night.
Okay.
So the Torah itself has always been compared to a tree.
Yes, I
So
saw
the
that.
Torah has roots and there's branches and stuff like that, but also trees need water.
Mm-hmm.
And we say that the Torah is like a tree because it also needs water. It needs refreshing. It needs us, and we're the water that
Oh,
keeps the Torah going. So that's tree number one.
okay.
Okay. Now, in the Bible itself, in the book of Numbers, I believe it's in the book of Numbers, it says, "V'chi tavo el haaretz," when you first come into the land, you shall plant a fruit tree.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you're supposed to do is plant a tree when we go into the promised land. So you go into Palestine, you go into Israel, you plant a tree. That's part one. You can't use the fruit for 3 years.
Okay.
You have to let it grow, and then you can't touch it for 3 years. On the fourth year, you're supposed to eat the first fruit in Jerusalem. Now, this is a law that would only abide if you live in Israel.
Okay.
This goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. How do you know how old a tree is?
The rings.
Well, you have to cut it down to get
Yeah,
the
yeah,
rings.
yeah. I could have dropped. That's true.
So that's really not going to help you. So yes, you're right. The rings do tell us the age
Yep.
of the tree. But the other way is, so if I plant the tree in January, it will turn 1 year old on Tu B'Shvat, on the 15th of Shavat.
Okay.
Then the next year, it's now 2 years old. And the next year, it's 3 years old. On the fourth year, you get to eat the fruit in Jerusalem. So that the fruit that comes out and people that are living there would actually eat it in Jerusalem because it's a way of showing the connection between you and God and nature. So that's part of the tree thing.
Okay.
That's it. Initially, Tu B'Shvat. If you look in the Mishnah and eventually the Gemara, you find out that Tu B'Shvat was the equivalent in during the times of the temple to April 15th.
Okay.
So
Understood.
the question is, why are taxes due on April 15th? Because April 1st comes to soon. So that's probably the reason how they came up with the 15th. I really don't know how they
I
did it.
don't either.
There's a discussion in the Talmud that Shammai, this is during the time right around the year of, a few years before the temple's destroyed.
Hmm.
The temple's still in existence. Shammai says that everyone should bring their first fruits or the fruits for the temple and for the priests and stuff on the first day of Shabbat. But the it's just beginning to bloom. So it's called, and so because the fruits are just coming out, it's just the end of the rainy season in Israel. And so Hillel gave the said he was more the progenitor of the lower middle class, The upper class always had the fruit in some
Hmm.
ways, but and that was Shammai. Hillel comes with the next thing, says, you know what, let's just do it on the 15th of Shabbat, give people a couple extra days, a couple extra weeks to do it. So that became the New Year of trees. There are four New Years in Judaism.
Okay.
There's the New Year for trees,
Yep.
which you heard about, the New Year for kings, that's Nisan. That's like January 4th.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how you would decide that the king was, had 1 year or 2 year, whatever. You could be elect. Doesn't matter when you're elected, whatever. Your term starts on January 4th.
All right.
Okay, or ends on January 4th, depending on what happens. Uh, so that's the other New Year's. The other New Year is the Rosh Hashanah that we know of.
Yes.
Okay, and there's also that same one is also the New Year right around Elul. It's also the New Year of it's like where animals are also judged too. So you have all these different New Years throughout. The New Year for trees was just a New Year. That's how you decide how old a tree
How
is.
old your trees are.
You know, Given all that, it goes further.
Okay.
So in the 1800s, when the Zionist Congress first met, they one of the things that had to happen was the when they created Zionism,
Hmm.
they needed to purchase land in the land of Israel.
Okay.
Okay, this is after the Balfour Declaration, so they could do it. So people were actually purchasing land, and the way they got the money is they had these blue boxes from the Jewish National Fund. In Hebrew, it's Keren Kayemet L'Israel, or KKL, as everyone says it. So everyone had these blue boxes, and this went through all. If you went to the Lower East Side at the time when all the immigrants came in, all the homes had these blue boxes, as well as a bunch of other boxes for tzedakah.
Okay.
And all the pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters would go into these boxes, and they would give them to their respective synagogues or different organizations. And they would all be funneled into the Jewish National Fund or the Zionist movement to purchase land in Israel. When I was growing up, you could buy what we call buy a tree, and
Hmm.
so it became to the fact that Tu B'Shvat eventually became buy a tree, and that's how you can donate to Israel. So if you go to Israel today, you'll see like the Jerusalem forest.
All right.
Okay, I have at least a couple dozen trees there. I can't tell you which ones are mine. Unless you buy a grove, they don't put your name on every
It's
tree.
like the stars you can buy. Name a star.
Exactly. Exactly. But so they plant a tree because it is one of the 613 mitzvot is to plant a tree in Israel.
Okay.
So when I was there in 72, I planted a tree in Israel. Um, so, somewhere in Jerusalem. I don't couldn't. I probably could find it today, but I've been there a few times. And I haven't gone back to look at my tree.
See, nowadays you would just drop a pin where it was so you could
Yes,
always go there.
yeah, but didn't do it then. Uh, so that eventually became a way to support Israel. So when I was growing up, we used to have these little cards, and you used to put 10 dimes in them
Hmm.
because the trees were $1. And then you turn it into the school, and then of course, and you get a little certificate saying you planted a tree in honor of someone, in memory of someone, so things of that sort. We still do that today, except you have to go on to the Jewish National Fund's website
All
and
right.
buy the tree. If you do it, it helps our school. It's a fundraiser. We get certain points and little prizes afterwards, but you can still do it. But the trees are now $18 a piece.
Okay.
They've gone up.
They're not a dollar.
Right. So that's the tree issue in
Okay.
many respects.
All right. I want to kind of go into that in a second because I had some follow-up
Yes, I
questions
know.
of
So just
why I wanted to talk about trees. My first question is about, you know, I grabbed a pamphlet out of the coat room and we read it this morning about tying everything into how we are trees and the similarity with taking care of like ourselves because humans can bear fruit just like trees. We grow and we change and we are products of our environment just like trees. So what is it outside of your $18 or your dollar of trees, what is it that Jewish communities or in our homes we could be doing this time of year to kind of celebrate and be mindful of this? Is there
uh,
anything
Tu
that's
B'Shvat,
traditional?
aside from the essentially Jewish Arbor Day, it's also become kind of a Jewish Earth Day.
Okay.
So it's very environmentally centered. I mean, now it's just like, what can you do for trees? In terms of just look at the world, we need trees for a lot of reasons. And we start with and, you know, which is not quite what you're asking.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously need trees, but the connection was, for example, like a gratitude tree.
Hmm.
What do you, what are you grateful for? And so if you think of a tree with all the leaves would be the things that you're grateful for, and you can identify those things that you're thankful for, that you're grateful for.
Okay.
That's one thing. The other thing is getting in touch with yourself as well as getting in touch with nature. In the 16th century, the Kabbalists created Tu B'Shvat as a very mystical thing. So the Tu B'Shvat Seder, and it's like similar Seder, except that instead of 4 cups of the red wine, it's the 4 cups are, you start with white wine, white mixture of white, a little bit of red, then a little bit of white in red, and then complete red wine. So you have like those 4 cups,
Hmm.
and then you talk about nature and how and the different sefirot, the different emanations of God, and they go through this seder, but it's actually a way of getting in touch a little bit with yourself
Okay.
and how you feel about what you're doing, about intentions, about not just gratitude, but what are your intentions? What's the covenant? What are you thinking about when you're in a prayer session? What do you think about at home? What are you doing to keep the home clean and and running? I mean, are you taking time for yourself type thing? Trees take time for yourself. Those types of things. So that's a little bit of what you were looking at
Yeah.
before. Yeah, before what you were looking at was information from Blue Dove, which is a Jewish mental health program,
Okay. It
and
was
that
fantastic.
yeah, it is.
Love that pamphlet.
It is amazing, and they do a thing for every holiday. But the
Oh,
thing they did for
neat.
Tu B'Shvat was really cool.
Because we started a gratitude journal about a month ago, and the very last page of that pamphlet I grabbed had the little leaves, and it was the mindfulness
Right.
gratitude. So, I'm going to make my husband actually write them down now rather than just doing our spoken out loud
Well,
journal.
that's up to
So it was really cool how it sort of tied that and body positivity, taking care of ourselves in. I really,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that's a big because however we take care of nature is also how we take care of ourselves. And if we're not taking
Hmm.
care of ourselves, we can also ignore those things around us.
And it seems like, being in upstate New York, it is dark, it is cold. Focusing not just that there is light and growth coming in a few months, but also mental health needs this time of year. That's why we
Right.
started our journal because it's dark and cold out right now.
Yes, it
So
is.
it's not my favorite time. So I do have a couple other questions I just sort of wanted to follow up there. And these are all my tree related questions. So right right around Hanukkah time, I had a coworker who had a family member pass away. And you sort of touched on this, but I do want to go back and kind of just talk about it a little more, maybe. My office got together and we bought an olive tree in Israel in memory of that person. Does that tie back into sort of what you were
Exactly.
saying? It's a reason to
The
do that
tree.
mitzvah and
That's right. You buy trees to be planted in Israel in honor of people, in memory of people, and you just go on the website and do it, and they give you a little
yeah,
certificate.
but yeah, we got that little nice
Yeah.
thing. So, because that again, it happened, and the universe was like, we got to talk about trees because all these things were happening. And I also saw on there that when a baby is born,
Oh yeah. You can do it when a baby's born. I mean,
okay,
any simcha, any life cycle event can be remembered, memorized, in by buying the tree, and it's a very Jewish thing to do. It's a very, it's also a way of supporting Israel at this time,
hmm,
and it's also just a way of kind of acknowledging what happened, with other people. And it's something that they may never see their tree. I mean, I
hmm,
always tell people when they get one, I remind them their watering day is Thursdays. Uh, they, at least they know that someone was thinking about them, and it is forever. I mean, the trees last hundreds and hundreds of
yeah,
years.
yeah. Well, it's how you said that it's a very Jewish thing because when we bought our house last year, my husband bought 10 trees. And if my yard is very tiny, we have like an eighth of an acre. So he bought all these fruit trees, and a couple of them survived. We learned very quickly that our property is used to be where the town stored all the salt and the sand for.
Oh, geez.
So when you go to dig a hole for a tree, I mean, a hole this big took almost 3 hours to dig because we were pulling big rocks up. So a couple of them survived. And I was very upset we had all these trees and they were not doing so well. So now I can tell them, okay, maybe we'll try again with our 10 trees that the Arbor
But
Day Foundation will give us.
we decided to put a swimming pool in our backyard.
Hmm.
So to do that, one of the trees had to go. It was
Okay.
like in the way. Yeah, this tree we had like a couple birdhouses on.
Hmm.
So, I mean, the tree kind of went through a few life cycles with everybody. So, there was I'm not going to say everyone was really sad about it, but we wanted to keep them, kind of like, okay, well, let's remember this tree because it really was it had to go anyways. But so when the tree got knocked down and they started cutting it up, I asked them to cut one slice, just of the trunk so that we could keep it, and we still have it. And it's just like it's a remembrance of the tree.
The tree.
It's just there.
Oh, that's very cool. So my follow-up questions